tell you that I'll give you a little clue of what altitude is, so you know. You see, this is where you are right now, close to sea level, and this is the altitude of the atmosphere. So that's air molecules, and it's a pressure. It's on your bodies right now. It's all around us. And when you go to La Paz, you will see that we are located on the mountain, about 1/3 less pressure of air on top of us. So this is a physics pressure, okay? So molecules separate between themselves because they are not being pressed as much as at sea level. You see, at sea level, this is an oxygen molecule, this is another oxygen molecule in the air, which is 20.9%. You go up in the mountain, and they separate themselves because there's less pressure pushing them together. This is very important, a very, very important concept. And so I wanted to give you an idea of some of these things. So the altitude of the atmosphere is around 20 kilometers. The fraction of gases is the same at all altitudes. In other words, it's 20.9% oxygen, 78.9 nitrogen, and greater than 1% CO2 kilograms hours. But this balance is maintained always at any altitude. Okay, so what changes is the pressure, but the percentages remain the same. This is a very important concept. So to give you an idea of some values, I don't want to give you a lot of data, but I want to show you this because you see the pressure here of the atmosphere, the weight is 760. In La Paz it's 495, and that's 2/3 of the pressure. The inspired oxygen tension is how much oxygen you have here in the pressure. It's 150, we have 94. At the arterial level, you have 100 at sea level and 60 in La Paz. So you see, everything is 2/3 less. So we reduce everything to 2/3, except the saturation, because you will learn about that in physiology later on. It's an S-shaped curve of hemoglobin. So as we go up in the mountain, this is sea level, this is where we are right now in Jaipur. You go to La Paz, Professor Biradar and Dr. Tusandas have come to a symposium in La Paz. They arrived at the airport in La Paz. The airplane lands at 4,100 meters. Less density of air, so the air landing has to be longer because the airplane has to land with much more distance. And this is where we have Chacaltaya, a pyramid laboratory, where we work. We can go there in 2 hours. Then Sajama is where the highest mountain in Bolivia, where a soccer game is played. And then this is Mount Everest, the highest point on planet Earth. So this is the basic stuff I wanted to give you about high altitude. Now, I want to explain to you So now we are going to talk about the subject theme that is of most interest for you. Space travel in a high altitude environment. 9 pounds, the Americans use pounds per square inch. We use millimeters of mercury. But I will explain that a little later on, what that means. And 21% oxygen, which is 20.9 actually. Biology bypassing the pressure laws of physics. And this term, this new terminology that we have developed in our institute called biospace forming. You see, when you are in space, there is no pressure. All that weight of the atmosphere, of the air we breathe, is not out there in space. So the pressure is zero in space. So in order for us to live, we have to pressure oxygen into our tissues. And that's why you have to have that equipment that you go into in order to breathe like we are breathing here on planet Earth. So to stay alive in space, you need a pressure vessel around the astronaut. That's the spacesuit. Protection from extreme environmental hazards, radiation, micrometeorites, human performance, mobility, workload, gloves, thermal control. You know, if you put them up there and you don't cool down, the body can overheat and it will be a problem. Then, on the back, this backpack, you have oxygen supply, you have pressure control, the carbon dioxide and trace contaminant. As you breathe, you breathe carbon dioxide out of your lungs, and that has to be absorbed. You see, on planet Earth, all these beautiful plants are taking care of the carbon dioxide, and they're providing us oxygen. But inside that, you have to absorb it with some chemicals, which is called soda lime. Carbon dioxide and trace contaminant removal, humidity control, thermal control, power communications, and data display. So all that has to go inside. So you're completely like in a small planet Earth in the spacesuit. So 50 years of work in my institute has made us study how you adapt to high altitude. And these 50 years have driven us into talk about space, and we will deal with oxygen supply and pressure control. You see, this is how the spacesuits are, and the models, different models that have evolved. Look how big that is, because you have to maintain the pressure. Look, move your arms. There can be no leaks, because obviously you will lose the pressure. Look at her, with a different model, very heavy. Look at him. Look at the gloves. You know how difficult it is sometimes to do something with gloves. On top of that, put pressure there. And then you have to go in space and use a drill. It's very difficult. So it's very complicated. So this is why I have developed what I will tell you. You see, there it is. It's called extravehicular activity. This is the extravehicular mobility unit. Fabulous technology. And you in India are going to space. Some of you may end up doing space medicine. You know, maybe I will impress you to go into space medicine because it's very interesting. You see these chambers? They are very thick iron because you have to try the pressures. And in these chambers, many years back, they have tried putting people as though they were in space. So once you went inside, they pumped the air out with a vacuum until there was almost no air inside. And that reduces the pressure to zero like in space. This man was doing the testing with the special suits they were trying out. And you know what happened? Because things happened. The pipe, one of the pipes blew. So suddenly, he was going from a sea level pressure to zero. And he later said he felt his mouth, saliva bubbles, and then he fainted. Of course, they took him out very fast with the adequate support. And he woke up and he was fine. You know why his saliva bubbled? Because that's the pressure of water vapor. In your bodies, we are at 37 degrees centigrade, and that has a pressure of water. So since the environment was zero, water was boiling from his saliva. So you see, that's how risky space is. And look, these are all machines, they have tested this, and they have left it. They have developed the procedures and left it. This is a modern tank in White Sands in the United States, and they do all these tests. Now this is the Russian spacesuit. Look at that. And when you want to go in, look how it is. It opens from the back. It's very uncomfortable. You have to go in there and then put all this, because the pressure has to be maintained. Look, they have a double seal in order to keep the pressure and to keep them safe. So it's very difficult to deal with space. This is the American International Space Station. These are the current suits used in space. Look at the size of those things. Look at Earth, and getting into these things is so complex. And the procedure to get into this from sea level, you have to go inside. You can't maintain inside the suit the sea level pressure.
I think the seats need a yes.
You know?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Really? I didn't know that. That's amazing. So look, she's from India.
She's from India.
An astronaut. But she's American now, probably. Yes. Wow, you see, well, you are already in space. That's wonderful. So, you know, for her to get in this suit and to come out from the space station, which is at sea level pressure like this, they have to go inside the suit to the Mount Everest pressure, because that's the least they can maintain. And that's a procedure that takes around 1 day, 1.5 days to gradually lower the pressure and then go into a chamber, hold the chamber, continue lowering the pressure. They make them breathe 100% oxygen. So you can't put on the suit and get out. It's a very long procedure, very complicated. So you also, if you use too much oxygen, you know, oxygen makes you burn. So if there's a spark, look what happened with that suit. You burn. So it's very dangerous. Whereas in La Paz, we don't have too much fire because we are in the high altitude. So the pressure of oxygen is also less. So we don't have houses burning all the time. We have less incidence of fire. So I was invited to give a talk in a space symposium by NASA friends, scientists. They said, you have to come give a talk about what you are talking to us in Cuba. I said, in Cuba, really? Okay, so I went. But 1 month before I went, one of my friends from the University of Barcelona, with whom I was writing a paper, sent me this paper and said, oh, they are proposing that you reduce the oxygen pressure to 8, but you increase the oxygen 32% atmosphere on the human in the spaceflight environment. This is in June 2013. I had not seen it before because it's a NASA paper. And so, you see, 8 pounds per square inch is 413 millimeters. Remember, here you are at 760. That's about 4,845 meters of altitude, more or less, which is in feet is 15,800. But I noticed in this paper that they increase oxygen, and immediately I said, why? Why? You see, that's hyperoxia. It's not 20.9% as it's normal, it's 32%. So, at sea level, the value, you see this value that they are reducing, normally here is 14 pounds per square inch, 760 millimeters, and 20.9% oxygen. That's the normal here. So this proposal was, it seemed to me, a completely artificial environment. And I found it nowhere on planet Earth. Nowhere. So I said, wait a minute. This balance between oxygen, 20.9%, 79.9% nitrogen, like 80% nitrogen and 21% oxygen, is a balance that gives life. Okay, this is a perfect balance. So with this proposal, they increase the oxygen and decrease the nitrogen, because you have to have 100%. You cannot go increasing the percentage of oxygen and maintaining the nitrogen by 80%, of course. It has to be. So, you see, to put the astronauts in this condition, I believe that Life is on the border without the normal limits. So, they also forgot here in this paper carbon dioxide and hemoglobin. Those are fundamental variables of my work. So, this is the arterial oxygen tension at sea level, 98 millimeters of mercury. This is normal for you guys. This is normal. If I measure your artery oxygen right now, in all of you, you will have around this value. That's normal. In the city of La Paz, if I measure my oxygen, 60%. If Professor Pusaldas, when he arrived in La Paz, I took a blood sample, I would have measured 60%. He would have said, oh my God, but that's how we live, with low oxygen. And this is chronic hypoxia. Hypoxia means low oxygen. And I have lived there for 40 years at that altitude. You see, all my life, I was born there and I lived there. So for me, this is normal oxygen. For me up there, my level of oxygen, that's normal. And when I come down to see you guys and talk to you, I am in hyperoxygen, a lot of oxygen, okay, pressure. But I maintain the percentage of oxygen and nitrogen. It's not that I receive more oxygen and less nitrogen. No, I receive the balance, okay? This is very important. So at sea level, we have a PaO2 of 98, but also look at carbon dioxide, it's 40 millimeters of mercury, all of you. And your hematocrit must be around 42, maybe a little less. Whereas in La Paz, where I live, this is the city where I live. Look, this is a city like any city in the world. It's in the mountains. You see the mountains. The airport is located up on top. And kids are playing, everybody's normal. And this barometric pressure, 1/3 less. And you see the oxygen goes down, like I told you. And also look at the carbon dioxide. It also goes down. We have lower carbon dioxide in our blood. So if you go up very fast to La Paz, you can get sick from high altitude sickness. And that is acute mountain sickness, high altitude pulmonary edema, high altitude cerebral edema. You will learn about that later on in your classes. But if you, and this creates a fear of hypoxia. Most sea-level medical doctors even are afraid of hypoxia, because they know they can get sick. So that's why they want to put the spaceships with more oxygen to keep it at sea level value. But we have an adaptation formula that's over there. Adaptation equals time over altitude. And if you go up slowly to La Paz, you go gradually, slowly, then the risk of having these problems almost disappears. And with time, if Professor Pusaldas will stay with us, I wish to take him to work with us for at least 40 days. In 40 days, his hematocrit will go up, you know? And my hematocrit goes from, when I'm at sea level, will increase to 50. Half of my blood is red blood cells. You will learn about that later on. So, again, this is the city of La Paz. Look at the beauty of that city. I live in this area. Unfortunately, I wasn't able, Dr. Pusaldas is a very busy man. We had a symposium of 7 days. He only went 3 days. He had to leave because I wanted to take him to my house to invite him some Bolivian food, but he had no time. But I live in the lower part of the city. This is the lower part. This is the center of town, and then the higher areas. You see? These are the altitudes. So we live in hypoxia, but look, for us hypoxia is disappearing. We don't worry about the low oxygen up there. You don't worry. Here you worry more because it affects you more. So in chronic hypoxia, we are defeating hypoxia, and we call that normoxia, like normal oxygen price. So we propose a normally Earth-found physiological condition for space water environments, proven over thousands of years. In other words, what I'm saying is, let's use a high altitude pressures as though you were in La Paz in the spaceships. Okay? So the first pillar is the adaptation formula. When I went to work as a visiting professor at the University of Copenhagen, 3 months I went back home and my hematocrit was 36. When I went back home, 36, my mother's like, oh my God, you are anemia, you are suffering from anemia, you must be not be eating good food. I'm sorry. It took me 40 days to go back to my normal hematocrit levels. 40 days. It's a long time to recover the red blood cells. So that's the acute adaptation, intermediate adaptation, and full adaptation. And this is the adaptation formula, time over altitude. This is very important because it gives you the idea of how much time it takes to adapt. For instance, from the city of La Paz, it's 41 days. For Mount Everest, you need 100 days to increase gradually your red cells because your organism has to produce more red cells with time. The second pillar is the tolerance to hypoxia formula. I will go over all these things a little fast so you don't get tired. But anyway, what happens is, if you go up in altitude, you see, as you go up in altitude, you increase the meters of altitude up to 8,800 meters Mount Everest, you increase your hemoglobin. You have more blood because it has to transport oxygen. But also, your carbon dioxide goes down, 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 down. The higher you go, the Mount Everest is very low. So I developed this formula, and this is something my father developed. It's called the thermodynamic pump. It's the pump you breathe with. You are breathing with a respiratory rate and a tidal volume, and that's ventilation. That's how much air you move in your lungs. Then the hemodynamic pump here is the heart. Your heart is another pump, but it's not pumping air. It's pumping a liquid substance called blood. And you see it has a heart rate and a tidal volume. They are both linked together. You see, respiratory rate, heart rate. Tidal volume is the volume of air you're breathing, and normal respiration, stroke volume. And that multiplied between themselves is ventilation and perfusion. And these two have in between the red blood cell. And that's the marvelous molecule that transports oxygen to your tissue. All these pumps are so your cells can live and receive oxygen. That's what it is. And all, of course, all the proteins and requirements. So, we then not working. Oh, here we are. The tolerance to hypoxia formula says that you have hemoglobin over carbon dioxide, that's the oxygen transport and ventilation. Since you are first year students, I will jump a little bit over these things. This is how you get it, and this is an explanation of how it affects in these pumps, this formula that we have developed. Anyway, what this says, this formula, is that the higher you go, the more tolerant you are to low oxygen, hypoxia. You see, here at sea level, you are 1 times tolerant. In the city of La Paz, you are 2 times tolerant. But on Mount Everest, you are 6 times more tolerant to low oxygen. That's why some people climb even to the summit of Mount Everest without oxygen tanks. You are able to tolerate very low levels of oxygen. So the third pillar is life is successfully carried out with chronic hypoxia, as I have shown you. Look at the beautiful city. That's a mountain in Ilimani. In the evening. The fourth pillar is that we have long lives at high altitude. In other words, that means we survive quite long. If we had a very hostile environment, we would be dying very young. But no, we continue to live. This man, it was reported in the newspaper that he was 123 years old, I was surprised, but then they checked, the American Geriatric Society checked, and it was only 116 years old. But that's 116 years old. That's amazing at 4,100 meters altitude. He lives in the country all his life. So I asked myself, well, how long does man live at high altitude? So I asked the registration of the whole country to give me the ages of people according to where we live. And this is the lower part of Bolivia, the Amazon, 2,021 meters of altitude, Beni 236. Santa Cruz is the second largest city in Bolivia, about 416 meters. I think this is the altitude more or less here, or is, I don't know, it must be around 400 meters here. And so this is like here. This is Tarija and Cochabamba, 2,500, Sucre, Oruro. This is where I live, in La Paz, 3,800 meters of altitude in the mountains. In Potosí, another department, is 4,090. Look at the curve of people older than 100 years. We live longer in the areas of high altitude. There's one city where the people live longest. It's at 2,800 meters. It's a lovely city in Chuquisaca. They have good wine and people are relaxed. So they have a much better life, quality food. Look, they're much more. So these are the older than 90 years of age. Look at these in the lowlands and look at them in the highlands. So you live longer at high altitude. Look at the comparison here when we look at the over 100 years and over 90 years. In two cities that have similar populations, 2 million inhabitants each. You see how much more long life. So it's not bad environment. We live long. You know, this is another extraordinary man from India originally. His parents were from India. This is Sanjay Gupta. He is the medical specialist of CNN. You know CNN news, American news. And his team called me up and they came to make an interview with us. And when the teams came 1 month before, my car was parked in front of my office. And so the team walked and looked at it and took pictures. And when he came to interview me, he spent 1 whole day in our institute. And we had him run on a treadmill. We put him in our chamber to show him, to put him at a higher altitude, to show him the tolerance to hypoxia. And then the next day we went riding in my car. This is my car. Actually, it was my father's car. We have it over 35 years. It's a Mercedes-Benz 1971. You know what's particular about this? It has always been at high altitude. No rust. It hasn't rusted, so it's very new. But if you take this car and you put it here in Vijayapur, I don't know if it will last 50 years. It may fall apart. So that's why he liked it. Because you know, Sanjay Gupta, his parents, both new mechanics, he told me in the car, and they used to fix the cars and he used to help, so he loved it. So you see, oxygen is a fundamental fuel that promotes combustion and promotes life in our cells. It's an energetic substance, but it also can be deleterious in greater quantities. So this is where we are. This beautiful planet Earth, full of beautiful plants. You have such a lovely city. I love all your plants. But we are going to go to space, to Mars, you know? That's Mars, no plants. You know, they're looking for life in space. There's many theories. I am one, because life is a gift of nature. Maybe we are the only ones alive in the whole universe. It's probable. They are looking for, but they might find some primary forms of life, maybe. But they also will have to evolve in the same conditions. These are variables that may be unique in the universe. So we are very valuable.